So how do you evaluate different AI services? So at the time of recording this video, ChatGPT Plus is, in my opinion, the best implementation of a large language model AI. However, there are other services coming up. Some of them are very specialized. Some of them are built into tools that you'll already be using, and some offer more complex capabilities people are going to be asking for very soon. With the release of Microsoft Copilot, a lot of my clients have been asking which AI solutions they should be using and how they can compare them. And it's difficult because these services offer different features and functionality. It's like comparing apples with pears. So in this video, I'm going to be exploring how you can evaluate different AI solutions and how you can apply a framework that allows you to compare one thing with another. I've worked as a consultant in technology for quite a while, and there are different ways of evaluating these types of technology. It's always quite subjective, and it very much depends on the user and the use case. One of the key problems in AI is that these use cases aren't always defined because the technology is quite new. Therefore, you need to have quite a broad view of your evaluation criteria and be able to build a framework that you can use to select the right tool. Now, this will usually come down to what's important to you and your business. A small independent operator or a consultant will have different needs and risk appetite to a large organization with hundreds or thousands of employees. And weighing up those needs and risks is something that only the business itself can do. However, you still need a framework or some way of evaluating these things. For myself, I've used an analytic hierarchy process. This basically creates a weighted score based on the relationships between different criteria for AI solutions. I'll leave a copy of the spreadsheet that I use on my website so you can better understand this approach if you want to see the detail of this method. The basis of this method is to select certain criteria, and I've selected 10 criteria that I think are important when you're choosing an AI solution. I've given weightings to those based on my experience of working as a professional. I use AI in pretty much everything that I do now, and I've used hundreds of tools across a wide variety of domains across lots of different use cases. So these criteria give a wide indication of the different aspects you need to consider. This won't cover everything, but it should give a structured view of which AI service should result in being the best and most appropriate for you. However, this is all subjective. So let me take you through my evaluation criteria and the weighting I give each element. The model. So the first category I use is the model, and this refers to the underlying algorithms, the training, data quality, speed, the breadth of knowledge, the reasoning capabilities of that model, and generally just how intelligent it seems. How intelligent it seems can be quite subjective. When I consider the model, I don't just consider how it performs on benchmarks. What I consider is the other factors that influence how it performs in practical tasks. So for example, ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot both use the same GPT-4 model from OpenAI. However, there's different system prompts, guardrails, fine-tunings, weightings, which are applied to these models, leading to very different outputs. This gives each model a slightly different personality. As anyone who's used both Copilot and ChatGPT will tell you, the ChatGPT implementation is much more useful on a practical basis. The reason I give such a large weighting to model is that this is the cognitive engine of the AI. The smarter the model, the better the results. The next most important category I think about is the flexibility of the solution. So looking at a solution and looking how flexible it is, not just for one particular use case, but for multiple use cases. There's a lot of different applications that are out there at the moment. You've probably seen a proliferation of thousands of AI apps, the majority of which are actually just a front end of a specific use case, talking to a large language model like GPT 3.5. The flexibility of the solution is a factor of how many different use cases and capabilities can you use it for. Does it have multimodality? Does it allow you to use pictures, voice, audio? Does it allow you to upload different documents and use its feature set across different workflows? Just as a comparison, something like ChatGPT is very much an open and very flexible platform. However, something more like Otter AI, which transcribes meetings for you, has a very clear single use case, in which case its flexibility would be quite low, but performance to that particular use case would be quite high. Flexibility is the second criteria for me in terms of weighting, due mainly to the fact that use cases are constantly evolving and being discovered, and having a flexible solution allows you to leverage the same system for multiple use cases. How you value privacy is very subjective. As an individual running a small business, your risk appetite might be different to that of a large corporate entity. The risks and impacts associated with your intellectual property being compromised or personal data breaches vary depending on your business model, industry, and risk appetite. A key element for gauging this comes down to trust in the AI solution provider. Do you really believe the terms and conditions? Can you opt out of using your data for training? Most AI services will tell you that they're using a private model. In fact, most of the ones that you pay for, you can opt into that privacy model so they don't train on your data. They won't use your data elsewhere. Now, whether you believe that or not is down to your risk appetite. For me, this is where Microsoft are doing very well because they're feeding on this fear that people have of privacy of information, of their data being used as training data. All AI services realistically have two competing objectives. One is to get as much data as they can because that helps them build better models. But two is to gain your trust, so you'll use their services. And it's a balance between the two. If ChatGPT were releasing every document that you put into it into the public web, I don't think anyone would really want to use it anymore. But likewise, if their model suffers because it has no training data, no one will want to use it. So you've got this position between the two of finding good data, using good data, but also respecting privacy. I personally weigh user experience equally to privacy. For me, this is a critical piece, especially at the moment, for using AI. Most people who are using AI are only just really becoming familiar with it, especially in a professional context. Providing them with a simple UX can make their job easier. Where you've got a single use case, say something like Grammarly, where it's correcting grammar, this is quite easy because the UX can be tied into exactly that use case. When you've got a more flexible tool, the UX can be a bit more difficult. It might be a bit more open, like a blank page. It's difficult to understand what to do. For me, the key around UX is the ability to capture and create a mental model of how that tool works. And once you can create a mental model of how the tool works, you can use the tool in a repeatable, efficient fashion. Features. The next category I use is features. So these are kind of like the differentials between one system and another. So for example, in ChatGPT Plus, I can use the image function. I can take a picture of something. It's multimodal. I've got this image recognition feature. I can use that to analyze pictures and find out what's in them. I don't have that functionality using Claude. It doesn't exist at the moment. So I'd have to give ChatGPT a higher score on features. But likewise, in something like Notion AI with a feature to auto-complete database entries, it can do multiple things at once. And again, that's a different feature. It's something you don't get in ChatGPT or even in Copilot with Excel. Workflow is how aligned is this solution with the tasks that you're doing. For instance, if you're an individual whose sole job is to create job descriptions, then there might be an AI job description creator that you would use, and that's probably got a great workflow. It takes you through all the steps, you can use it again, it'll be well optimized. However, it's not very flexible as a workflow because you can only use it for job descriptions. Ideally from a tool, what you're looking for is something that makes the creation of workflows very simple, but also makes it very easy to repeat and use. So for instance, if you're developing bids or writing documents, having a workflow that guides you through that process would be really useful. Workflow is definitely one of those areas where these defined narrow use case applications do much better than the generic applications. However, with the generic applications, they are working on this functionality. OpenAI's GPTs, which you might have heard of, are a take on workflows. So you can program a GPT using ChatGPT to do the same thing over and over again, ask you for the same information, and give it the right context for that task. This is one of the most active areas of development right now in AI solutions, so expect a lot of change in this space. This is reflected in the lower weighting I give this, as the capabilities are changing so fast, having a higher weighting would make evaluation too sensitive to change. Access and integration. This criteria focuses on the solution's ability to be accessed by users and to be integrated with other tools and systems. A lot of this is dependent on the use of APIs to connect services and integrate with other tools. While having AI integrated into a tool you already use, or being able to connect to an AI using an API, application programming interface, is really helpful. However, sometimes this can bring risks and complexities, especially around data governance. This weighting is relatively low as typical solutions either offer an API or don't, and that makes it quite binary. Private data I define as being the ability of the AI solution to look at and analyze your own data. So this isn't data that's actually built into the model. This is data that you might feed into it. So this might be a document, it might be a spreadsheet, it might be something that you're working on that you want to use with the model. For instance, you're working on a proposal. You might want to feed into the AI things like case studies. Now, these case studies are your private data. The ability of an AI solution to access and use your own private data is highly dependent on the use case. If you need AI to sift through millions of emails and help you with your service desk planning, that is quite different to a tool that generates recipes for your blog. With most tools, there are workarounds if they don't access your private data. There are actually some compelling arguments for not giving AI solutions wholesale access to your private data, even if you trust them. The process of accessing and using your data tends to be quite opaque at the moment, and that isn't always as helpful as you might initially think, especially when you need to trust the outputs 100%. The ease of workarounds and the limited benefits so far mean this is typically less important, and hence the weighting reflects this. For public data, this is the ability for the model to access things that are in the public domain. So whether these are actually baked into the model itself or whether these are third-party access, this might be things like web search, tweets, YouTube videos, research papers, that kind of thing. Most tools that need this access currently have it, and if they don't, typically have simple ways of integrating this access using APIs or simple copy and paste capabilities. Hence, I don't worry too much about this unless the tool is specifically designed to do this. For example, the AI web search engine Perplexity. Last is cost. At the moment, we're seeing a generic price for AI per user per month at around $20. And that seems to be consistent whether you've got a single use case solution or whether you're using a more generic tool like ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini. That seems to be the standard level of cost for these kind of services. Now, if you're using lots of different tools, which all have this cost, that will add up. Whereas if you use one generic tool with lots of different use cases, you may have less subscription costs, but then you've got to invest your own time and energy into developing those use cases and workflows. And this comes down to your appetite as to how much effort you want to put in and how innovative you want to be. So there are my evaluation criteria and the weightings that I use. I use these for assessing a tool and trying to put a number on which one is best. As mentioned, I've used an analytic hierarchy process, which is based on the relationships and priorities between different criteria. However, you might just have a prioritized list. And to be fair, a lot of organisations, they'll just put privacy at the top because they're risk averse. When I provide insight and guidance on AI solutions, this is the process I'm using, which gives me a rounded view of which of these tools are best and which are suitable. But this is always going to be based primarily on the use cases, and these are not always clear to an organisation. My weightings tend towards intelligence and flexibility. This will likely change as the market for AI solutions matures, but right now this seems like the sensible approach for most businesses exploring AI. Hopefully this gives you a bit of insight into how you can evaluate different AI solutions and make judgments in such a fast-moving and volatile space. I'll be keen to hear about the criteria and weightings that you're using, so do reach out if you want to compare notes.